Good evening. As a preliminary matter, this is John Regan, Chair of the Auburn Planning Board. Permit me to confirm that all members are present. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Ronald Brooks.
Here.
Glenn Feldman.
Here.
Town officials and employees participating when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Town planner, Dr. Adam Menard.
Here.
Where she is. Staff Assistant Danielle Chamberlain Roberts.
Here.
Good evening. This open meeting of the Town of Auburn Planning Board of Tuesday, September 24th, 2024, now called to order at 7 p.m. This meeting is being conducted as a hybrid format under Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022. For this meeting, the Planning Board is convening in person and by remote access. The remote access information has been posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. Please note that the meeting is being recorded by Auburn Cable Television. Is there anyone here in the audience tonight that is recording tonight's meeting? Being none, accordingly, those members of the Planning Board, employees, and members of the public who participate remotely, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and please take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Please rise and join us in a salute to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All supporting materials that have been provided to the members of this body are available on the town's website. I'd like to remind the audience, applicants, town administration, and each of the planning board members to please refrain from asking questions in regards to all matters discussed this evening without first being granted my consent. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. First on the agenda tonight is Dr. Syed M. Ali Tahir requesting site plan approval under section 3.2.3.7 of the Auburn zoning bylaw for a cemetery at 0 Cemetery Road, Auburn, Mass. 01501, map 3, parcel 54. Has been continued since our September 10th meeting. Is there anyone here representing the doctor?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Todd Curtin from Ty and Bond. So we have responded to a second set of comments, and we turned that in last week. We had forwarded that over to Graves Engineering. I don't know if Adam's heard anything since then. We've reached out and we're waiting to hear back ourselves. So it's the last set of comments we're expecting, we're hoping. So we're not sure where the board would stand relative to any kind of conditional approval, or is that really all we're waiting on from your perspective?
I think we can condition on Graves' approval.
Yeah, okay. That'd be great.
Yeah, let him finish.
Hi. Good. Do you come up here, or?
She has to come up there,
Yeah.
identify herself, tell us where she lives.
I'm Michelle Colross, 30 Collier Way. So I was just wondering if I've read all of the notes from both the last meeting and all of this. So do you know where the dirty fill is coming from that's going to go on top of the 8 feet?
Not on top, the top will be clean.
The top's going to be clean, and then okay, so the top's clean. So the bottom, the underneath, the 100,000 cubic yards,
Yeah.
that where that fill's coming from?
So I'll just say, if I don't know if it's public.
No, you can answer her.
Okay.
Okay.
Easier.
So what happens is typically, like a good example right now, there's less than RCS1 soils that are being generated from a project right on 495, right by the highway, right by Mass Pike. So it's like mildly and or very low contaminated soils. They're just, projects like that come up. And that's what we're hoping, we know they come up a lot in the state. So they would probably be Massachusetts, because the shorter distance of trucking is going to be a cost saver for whoever's trying to get rid of the soils. But it's usually displaced soils that are,
Yeah, I looked it up.
yeah,
Yeah, it's supposed to be schools or houses or something that's like less than 500 feet within a waterway that you're using for ours.
in this,
Soils.
yeah, in this case, with a similar soil provision, because we already have contaminated soils, much higher contaminated soils remaining on site.
But they're undisturbed at this point,
Yeah,
right?
as far as undisturbed, yeah,
Right.
as far as being,
Right.
that are there, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So hopefully that's going to happen. It doesn't look like best management practices are going to be done after, because this, from everything that I'm reading, which it doesn't look like you guys, Dr. Menard, it doesn't look like you said that you needed conservation's approval before moving forward with this? The last notes,
I'd have to double check if they've gone through conservation. If they have gone through conservation
It
as
hasn't
well
been
as
approved.
ZBA.
We're waiting the same game almost. They're at the same point.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been in front of them a couple times.
okay. I'm on conservation. I need to just say
okay.
that. I'll just tell you that. So what I need to try and understand is there going to be any oversight for, this drains directly into Stoneville Reservoir. And it says that, like here, which I don't really completely understand, that it doesn't impact a wetland, and it does. Sorry. This is not conducive to my notebook here. Hold on. Because in this report, and it says under the checklist, that there's no disturbance to any wetland resource area, but in the notes here at the beginning, it clearly says that it does.
Relative to the property, we don't have any.
Yeah, it sounds like it should be
On page,
just the conservation.
well, it's not really, it's you guys. So it's the peak, so when they're actually building, if you look at 3.3 at the peak discharge rate, it says that it's going to be, they're redoing a new wetland. So what, it's saying it's going to be a new wetland.
Excuse me, have you gone before the Conservation Commission?
I,
I'm not asking you, I'm asking him.
I what?
Have you gone before the Conservation Commission? And you got approval from the Conservation Commission?
no,
We had the same, they were waiting for the.
Then this needs to wait for the Conservation
Okay.
Commission. This is
I
a
just
planning board
wanted
meeting,
to-
not a
okay,
Conservation
so-
Commission meeting.
so this is you guys. If you guys approve this tonight, is there going to be, well, it alerted me because of Dr. Menard's comment in the notes from last meeting that you guys could approve it, it looked like, without going before the conservation. That's.
We can
okay.
approve it, but we condition it on approval from the
Okay,
Conservation.
all right, okay, sorry, all right, then I'm done. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions from anybody?
You said it, the brook where that would run through would eventually go into Stoneville, lower Stoneville?
I'm not sure if they've got their land disturbance, but they'll have to go through that process.
Cemetery Road is kind of down low on Stafford, so I almost think it would have to come in at the bottom end of off Burnett Street, someplace there, come under the tracks and go in there. I'm just curious. I don't think it would be able to get up into Upper Stoneville.
It's away.
Says, if you look at 3.7, it's page 3.9. The site discharges stormwater runoff to wetlands located to the east project, which ultimately discharges to Stoneville Pond. There are no impairments listed to Stoneville Pond in Massachusetts, year 2022 integrated list of waters. And it's not anticipated that there will be a problem. But my questions are, if, I know it's not anticipated, nobody anticipates having an accident either. That's why we have insurance. If there is a problem, do the Auburn residents pay for it, or does the doctor pay for it? And is there any best management practices put in place by this board or our board in order to, if there is, who's watching over that? Is somebody going to be looking at that pond or testing it or testing the well that's down below it later on to see if there is a problem killing the fish? Because if there is something, if we don't know where that 100,000 cubic yards of waste is coming
But
from.
On that 100,000 cubic yards, before they can bring it to the town, it has to be tested every 500 cubic yards.
But if
It
there's
has to meet
ash
the
in it.
state requirement.
Okay, so if there's ash in it, that ash, if it leaches into the groundwater and it goes into Stoneville Reservoir, ash. So you're saying if there's ash, because the last time that we talked, there was, is ash, could be a contaminant that's in that soil. If that ash leaches down into the groundwater and goes into Stoneville Reservoir, that kills fish, because it helps grow the weeds, which actually enables a swamp.
You taking a look at Eddie Pond?
But at least the town of Auburn actually helps Eddie Pond. The town doesn't own Stoneville Reservoir.
And that is, as far as less than RCS1 soils, they're at those kind of concentrations that they factor in groundwater leaching component, and that's, they're less than what would be like what's called the GW1 standard. They're low enough that you don't have, that's what you don't typically see or would have from it. And again, the soils that are underneath are much worse. They're staying. And then when you put a cap on top with clean soil, the infiltration, plus our stormwater design isn't infiltrating through the soils. It's actually being captured above grade and lined and then taken out. So they're not even going through, for stormwater runoff. I'm probably not the best person to talk about that because I'm not the engineer designer.
You have the swales that go to the drainage system. So anything that runs off the top of the cemetery goes down to the swale, into the catch basins. The catch basins have a sump, they have a hood on the inside, and that all gets,
And again,
Take out.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
But you guys are still not taking direct responsibility if there is a problem in the future. And there's nobody that's actually overseeing it or going to test it in the future. So if there is a problem, it's an Auburn problem, not a them problem.
cemetery's problem. So during the construction of this and during the filling and the compaction and all that, I am assuming that Ty and Bond's going to have a field representative there the whole time?
There'll be the materials management plan for the construction and and the testing as far as what happens with those kind of scenarios is another LSP will be looking to bring soils, and it happens at a lot of facilities that take them. They send a package, it's an LSP opinion package that says, where the soil came from, the sampling that occurred for it, it has to meet all the criteria to get onto the site. Dr. Saeed will have, from his end, will probably be Ty and Bond reviewing those packages from our side to say, yes, we also agree that they meet the less than RCS1 standards and then go through that.
Yeah, but all limits are state standard set.
Yeah. There's a lot of that soil around, yeah.
Whoever's generating the fill has to have their own LSP, and of course, you guys are going to have an LSP involved in the job.
Yeah, because it's an open RTN. It's an open release site until the cap is completed and everything is buttoned up and we put an AUL on the property that just, says if you dig down to those soils, you can't disturb them, that kind of stuff. And it's not the RCS1 soils, it's the soils that are there, which in some places are going to be very deep that remain. So there'll be an activity use limitation on the property that has all the protections relative to keeping the cap in place And, really, if there's any kind of development beyond the cemetery, which would never have to go through a lot of channels that change the site use, that's all protected, through the AUL. So until everything's done, we can't close that release tracking number out and with a permanent solution statement with an AUL on the property. That's the ultimate goal.
And the state finally gives the final approval, don't they?
They do, it's a privatized
DEP.
program. Yeah, the Massachusetts Contingency Plans to privatize program. They have, any AUL gets audited at any time, but we've had dialogue a year ago with Mass DEP, Bureau of Wayside Cleanup, and we do plan on going back to them. It was always like, which one do you go first? We're hoping to get the permits and then go back to them and explain where we're at and work with a contractor that does this kind of stuff. Like, there's a few of them out there. There's a couple that are close, that have facilities that are close that do this very type of work, in quarries or anything else. But we're not looking for some of the larger reclamation projects like those. There are the greater than 100,000 cubic yards where you trigger the need for a administrative consent order through the town. We're not doing that. We're just trying to get enough to raise the grades at the site, make this a doable project as well. That's the other thing. It's a lot of soil to make that a flat, relatively flat cemetery use, even if we didn't have this situation with the contamination. So that's what we're up against. And ultimately, it serves a good purpose relative to capping the soils that are there.
Just remain concerned of ash. Can we make it so we don't bring any ash in?
It's not, less than, but they can contain a little bit of ash. It's typically what you see is less than 5% of, urban fill type soil. You'd be surprised how, if you're digging your backyard in an urban environment, the types of contaminants that are present, and coal ash could be present. But typically, the less than RCS1 facilities, what they do is you have less than 5% debris, and it can be as low as less than 1% ash, if that's the case. But ash will show up. The type of metals that you typically see in ash are metals, mostly lead, and PAHs are a subset of semi-volatile organic carbons. They don't travel well. They're the kind that bind to soils. That's their typical nature. So those are what you typically see in urban fill. They're more of a soil issue than a groundwater issue. Yeah. Wood ash, coal ash. Yep. But certainly not like from a facility that generates it. That's not what you're looking for. It just ends up in urban settings or even inside of highways and things like that because of the historical use and, anthropogenic activities just impact a lot of the shallower soils. And they're just not easy to just bring to anywhere, So this is sort of like a beneficial use to raise the grades here where you obviously have soils much worse below.
When you said you're going before conservation?
Yeah, we've had to do the same thing. We've had to just wait through the stormwater report. That was a big thing to get through, and they knew we were coming to you. We went to the Conservation Commission first. I forget, it was in June. I think it's in a cover letter that we had, the most recent, with just a series of things that we've been doing. Zoning board, we had something come up that we didn't go to last meeting, so we're going in October. And then after that, we also have to go in front of the DPW and the Board of Selectmen as well, and I think the Board of Health will attend that as well. So we are in front of the Conservation Commission again. They haven't issued an order and conditions.
Are you going to be asking or requiring from them a lot more information on this ash and everything else like that before you determine what your findings would be? And you haven't gone yet?
No, we were,
Back, but-
yeah, we didn't have the questions per se.
Myself, I'd like to wait until they go before them and see what they have to say.
No. decide to approve this tonight, it's based on the condition that they get passed by the Conservation Commission, they get passed by the DPW, they get all the permits in order, and then they can go. If they don't meet any of those requirements, and they meet Graves' requirements, then it doesn't go.
And we can.
I just don't want to waste
condition
anybody
all
else's time bringing them back here again.
Okay. For the chair, conditioning that any applicant meets all town, state requirements is always a standard condition. Conditioning that any applicant meets all local boards, and
Yeah.
committees, as well as state requirements is
And
always,
that it gets
always a standard
positive
requirement.
vote from the Conservation Commission to continue and from zoning board and DPW.
Yeah, we obviously can't move forward without an order of conditions
No.
from Conservation Commission too, so.
We're just here for the site plan. That's what we look at. As far as conservation, it's out of my realm. DPW, it's out of my realm. So, Glenn, do you have any questions?
I do. I have a quick question for Michelle. Is there any evidence that the contamination that's already there in the soil has damaged Stoneville Pond at all?
In this report, it says as of 2022 that it's fine. That what was concerning to me was bringing in 100,000 cubic yards of dirty fill. I understand that they're putting clean fill on top. But it's a cemetery. They're going to be disturbing that, I don't know how many times. And we are relying upon other people not to disturb that cap going into dirty fill that will be disturbed, that could be going down into that ground table. And without anybody going in and testing that, without anybody looking at any further Stoneville Reservoir for contamination or that well that sits below it, that's a problem to me. Like, that's
So-
what I'm having a problem with.
In elevation, do we know the elevation difference between the existing elevation that's there now and what our final grade's going to be?
We do. I think the highest point difference is almost close to 30 feet in one area.
What's the lowest?
And the lowest, down by the roadway, in which we have a groundwater monitoring well right there, we've had no detections in that well relative to there's a standard that you compare it to for drinking water standards, and then there's the standards that you look at for what's called GW3 standards. That's for potential impacts of downgrading in surface water bodies. We haven't come close to exceeding those GW3 standards in groundwater on the site and the monitoring we've done. So the difference so basically what they did when they filled it, or created their own, they sort of created a little bit of a mound there already from the filling work they did through the 80s. The deepest depth of the test pit was almost where I'm talking about, was like 14 or 15 feet. And they didn't fill water, so they weren't below the water table, the groundwater table. It's below that, the water table, and then you hit bedrock at the site, because we have shallow wells and we have a bedrock monitoring well there. So the contamination doesn't sit in the groundwater table, and obviously we're just building up from there.
Right.
Building up.
How many sampling wells do you have out there?
We have 4 monitoring wells.
All on the downstream side, I assume?
One in the center, one like sort of cross-grading by both properties to the north and south. And then the one on the east is the one on the road, and that's the downgrading because everything pitches pretty steeply towards that.
Now, does this monitoring continue after the cemetery's finished?
We haven't discussed that as far as where we go, as far as a post. We could keep sampling it at the time we're doing, but we haven't committed to anything on that front.
Is there a provision to leave the wells in place?
We could easily put those wells back in, the shallow wells, yeah. We would probably work around them because they'd probably get damaged, yeah. And they could be, the one by the roadway is actually just out of the fill. Or it's not on the roadway, but it's off the roadway. And that was installed by another consultant. But the boring log for that, it indicates that they didn't run into any of the debris or that kind of soil there. So that one maybe just raised up, if you will, because we're going to have higher grades on it. It's a standpipe well. So we would probably just raise it up and that one could be probably reused. And if not, those are shallow wells. Those are easily replaced. The other ones are going to be, the other ones would be very deep, especially the one in the center. We're talking, the bedrock well's set about 30 or 35 feet, or 40, I think it's actually 40 feet below the top of grade now. And the shallow well next to it, I think is screened from 25 to 15. I'm not exactly sure going off the top of my head, but so just have an appreciation for how steep and where things are at this site and groundwater is way down there.
So what I like to do is to make a provision on the approval, if we approve it tonight, that the wells remain in even after. when it's all
Or
said and
replace,
done,
can we say
those
replace?
wells are intact. Because whether you sample them or not, it gives somebody else a chance to go out and sample.
Yep.
Whether it be the state, the town, whatever. So as far as Stoneville Reservoir goes, is there water taken from that for drinking water? Do you know?
I know that, I think that the Auburn Water District owns that. So.
I don't know if they take it from there. We have
Well, it
wells.
goes down the brook into, in back of where the wells are fed, in back of the flood diversion control channel.
So then Stoneville Reservoir has to be tested all the time. Now. They have to test it.
Is it a backup water supply or is it a active? Do you know if it's active or is it backup? Is it like a backup? I
Yeah,
don't,
the Auburn Water District only uses wells. They don't use surface water.
Right, what
They own
Ron's
the-
saying
they
is
own the
where
water.
this runs, this may infiltrate into the wells, is what he's saying, right?
Infiltrate into the.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
so I'm sure they test the water. They have to. I don't know if it's a backup or not. I
I
have
don't know
no
what the
idea.
testing requirements are.
so we're out of the zone 2 for that. I don't know if you know what zone 2, that's a area for protective, area they put around those. I've seen the zone 2 mapping to the southeast of our site, but we're not in that area. Our site's a distance away from it. So, and again, the biggest thing for what you're sampling groundwater for is to see if there's that component that it's getting into groundwater that would then ultimately make its way to a wetland that may connect to that. But we haven't seen anything like those kind of numbers in groundwater from a site that's been stagnant for a while, but, it's been there, and all the material's there.
Anybody else have any questions? Michelle, have any more questions?
And that's what we're. So that, what you just said is exactly my point. And I'm doing this as an Auburn resident, not on conservation, not on anything else. I have town water, so this isn't going to affect me, except for my pocketbook. If that starts leaching in, and I do live on Stoneville, however, I'm not in a butter, just like you just said. But if it does become a problem, and you don't know where that is coming from, if there is a significant amount of ash in that, and it does start affecting, because it does, per that report, flow into Stoneville Reservoir, and it starts suffocating the fish and creating more weeds that are already in there, like, the Auburn Water District has already proven that they just don't care about that. They don't take care of it. They don't do anything about the weeds. It will become more of a swamp at this particular point and create more of a problem with mosquitoes. It'll just be more of a problem that we probably will have to pay for. And that is an issue to me.
If,
So that is what I'm actually having the bigger problem with at this point, too.
that's the reason I want to leave the monitoring wells in place. Because they'll be able to tell if it's migrating toward, but long before,
Right.
they're a long way from the reservoir.
Right.
A long way from the reservoir.
So-
They'll be able to tell with two in the
With those
back, one in the
testing
middle,
pits.
one in the
Right,
front.
exactly.
They'll be able to tell if it's migrating. If it's migrating, it's their responsibility to pay for it,
And
not
then
the
it'll be their
town's.
responsibility.
And it's usually organic type compounds. These are inorganic that I'm talking
Right.
about. Yeah, the VOCs of the
As
world.
long as you're putting your money where your mouth is, I'm all good with that.
Those are the kind of things that travel in groundwater. Like if you're like dry cleaner sites with chlorinated VOCs, gasoline sites, gasoline components, organic compounds. Those are the ones that usually, they're the ones that get in the water table and cause havoc relative to drinking water supplies. So that the metals and pHs are basically, they bind to soils. That's what they do. They're a soil problem. You know, you could have some sites where groundwater has like a lead in groundwater, but it doesn't go very far. It's usually a very short distance, and we don't have that there. So, and the standards that we would be looking at with those lead levels in those soils are less than RCS1. Those factor in both the actual having contact with the soil and also the ability and/or that if it could leach out into groundwater. It's protective both ways. That's the way they set those standards.
Well, as far as the ash goes, which is your main
Yeah, the ash, I guess, I don't know if it's more the ash itself getting into the wetland that's a concern, or the ash leaching out into the groundwater, I guess, if you will. But we're not looking to take.
Well, ash is water soluble.
Ash is like, again, in urban fill, like we would have a limitation of how much, we're not looking to take.
What's that limitation?
It would either be less than 5% or 1%. Typical RCS1 facilities, that's what they have. They don't want to take a lot of ash, and we wouldn't want it either.
Oh, I'd like to see,
Yeah, it's a small volume.
I'd like to see 1%, not 5%. Because it's, in 100,000 yards, it's 1,000 yards or 5,000 yards.
Yeah.
It's not small.
Yep.
We're going to leave the wells in place, leave them intact, so they can always be sampled. It may be worth your while to test Stoneville Reservoir now, before the work begins, so you have a baseline.
If
If
they're
anybody comes back and says this, that, the other thing, you say, look, we got our wells, this was the baseline, it's what it still is.
The challenge with sampling any kind of surface water body that far away or anything with the reservoir is where to come from. Like if you start opening a can, or unless you have indication from your property that you're impacting that, which we don't, you have so many other contributing sources that could be it. I would think that they have some information on testing that. If that's, I don't know the status of that reservoir, so I don't know if it's a backup or is it like.
Well, you tested it. It's tested. How did you get this report? Like it said that in
We didn't.
2022 when you tested it.
We didn't test that. No, that's like a state thing that's done. We're just using the information from it. It's not from us testing anything. Yeah. They're very protective, obviously, of.
You have to.
So, yeah, we wouldn't be testing. In fact, we probably wouldn't be allowed to test. I don't think, unless we had a real strong reason. I mean, they're doing it.
Well,
It's,
if the state's tested it, we do have the baseline.
yeah,
That's all I'm concerned about, we have a baseline.
Yep.
Because anybody could dump ash in that pond at any time and blame it on you. That's all I'm saying. You have the baseline, you have the proof of the wells that's not migrating. You guys are all set. But if it does show in the wells that it's migrating, then it's up to the owner of the cemetery to pay for all damages because it's coming from his property. So the town would not be on the hook for it. And neither would, you on Auburn Water District or Elm Hill? So. You all set, Ron? You all set, Glenn? May I have a motion to approve with the following conditions?
Close the hearing first.
That's right.
I'll make a
Motion.
motion to close the hearing.
Second.
I'll second it.
All those in favor, Glenn?
Aye.
Ron?
Aye.
Myself, John Regan, aye. It is a vote. May I have a motion to approve with the following conditions? They meet all the criteria, get approved by the Conservation Commission, the DPW, and all state standards.
Conservation, DPW, there was one other.
All state standards. DEP.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
I'll second it.
All those in favor, Glenn?
Aye.
Ron?
Aye.
Myself, John Regan, and aye. It is a vote. You're on everybody else's committee now.
all right, thank you.
You're welcome. Next on the agenda is applicant J.P. Morgan, requesting special permit and site plan approval under section 3.2.5.11 of the Auburn zoning bylaws for a bank with the drive-up through at 368 Southbridge Street, Auburn, Mass. 01501, map 33, parcel 81, continued from our September 10th, 2024 meeting. Okay, I see somebody's already up there representing you. Before we get into any of this, we don't have enough guys to vote. We need a quorum of 4.
Understood. For the record, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Attorney Matt Eckel with Fletcher Tilton on behalf of the applicant. You beat me to the punch. We're going to respectfully request the continuance so we can have a full board at the next hearing.
I do have a couple comments, though. And if you look at any previous planning board meetings for the last 6 years, you know I go nuts over this stuff. I look in the details. You tell me what's equal to LeBaron Foundry. LeBaron Foundry hasn't existed since 2008. Get it out of your cut and paste. It drives me insane. The other thing I thought of is on the water line coming in with the hydrant. If you have the water line coming into the building, you have the fire line, which is 6-inch, I believe. And then you have a 2-inch, is it a 2, I think it's a 2-inch domestic.
For the record, Nick Dewhurst with Bowler. Yeah, I can double check, but it's either 2 or 1.5 typically.
Domestic doesn't matter, I know they're separated, so that's all I care about. But on all your fittings, you got rods holding the hydrant, Megalux. This is 2024, nobody uses rods anymore. Megalugs and thrust blocks for the belt suspenders.
Okay.
That's standard on everything now. I mean, most water departments require that. Most engineers require it from the contractors. It's usually in the specification. It may be in the specifications here, and it's not shown here in the detail. I don't know. I don't have the specs, but that's the only comments I had on it. So, if you guys have nothing else to go through and waste your time, I'm going to ask for a motion to continue to October 8th meeting. Is that fine with you guys?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion to continue to our October 8th planning board meeting.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Glenn?
Aye.
Ron?
Aye.
Myself, John Regan, and I, it is a vote. We'll see you in 2 weeks, guys. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Applicant CEMS LLC, care of Henry Resnikoff, requesting a special permit and site plan approval under section 3.2.5.3 of the Auburn zoning bylaws for a coffee shop and other site improvements at 602 Southbridge Street, Auburn, Mass. 01501, map 56, parcel 148. Continued from our 9/10/2024 meeting. They have requested a continuance to our October 8th meeting,
22nd.
or October 22nd meeting. They have a motion to continue to our October 22nd meeting.
I'll make that motion.
They have a second.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, Glenn?
Aye.
Ron?
Aye.
Myself, John Regan, and I, it is a vote. There is nothing up for discussion, no modifications. Could I have a motion to approve the July 9th, 2024 meeting minutes as corrected?
I'll make that motion.
You have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, Glenn?
Aye.
Ron?
Aye.
Myself, John Regan, and I, it is a vote. May I have a motion to approve the August 13th, 2024 meeting minutes as submitted?
I'll make that motion.
May I have a second?
Aye. Second.
All those in favor, Glenn?
Aye.
Aye.
Ron? Myself, John Regan, and I, it is a vote. Any new business unforeseen by me? None. Member Town Planner update?
None.
May I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I'll make that motion.
May I have a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor, Glenn?
Aye.
Ron?
Aye.
Myself, John Regan, and I, it is a vote.